so much for taking the time to chat to us today, but also congratulations on the brand new album as well.
Thank you. Thanks for making your time as well for this too.
Oh, no problem. So, mate, tell us a little bit about this album. What were your goals with this album when you sat down to start working on it?
Goals is a really good question. I think the main thing for me, as a musician or a composer or whatever you want to call it, as a human, is growth. Like, I always want to be personally evolving, and that means challenging myself and putting myself into new directions, or digging holes for myself that makes it a bit harder to get out of, but you learn something through that process. Because I think for me, at the end of the day, I don't want to make the same album twice. As much as I love the Red Hot Chili Peppers back in the 90s, 30 years on, they're still making the same records for the most part, and it's really uninspiring and uninteresting. I really want to make sure that I'm always pushing myself to that next place. And for me, the place for this album was, rather than using the orchestra as a backing, how do I actually integrate them as part of the band, and how do I make that one sound as opposed to playing heavy music with strings accompanying? I want them to be in the same hierarchy.
Yeah. Was that a difficult step to take? Did you have to approach your songwriting differently with the way that you went around doing that?
Yes and no and yes. It was, I found it a little bit difficult at the start of the process because I still, I guess, fell back on the idea of, you write the music first on a guitar or on a bass or on a piano, and then you find out how to fill the gaps or support what you've already written.
Yeah.
And then as I kind of had written the first few tracks, I went and hit delete on them because it did exactly that. And it wasn't really kind of sitting in that place where it felt like it was part of the same story. And the easiest way for me to kind of get around that thinking and push myself into kind of, I guess, different, it was like literally just writing all the songs on a piano for the most part. And that forced me to kind of challenge the voicings and explore different ideas, because piano's not my main instrument by far. It requires me to think when I play it. So that was a really good way to kind of go, okay, I need to think about what I'm doing here. And then it makes you go, oh, you know what, this one riff here would probably sound great on a cello. Now what if we did a double bass and go down an octave? How do we do that? It really takes you out of the mindset of writing primarily on a guitar or a bass and kind of going, well, that's the riff. And that's the riff.
Yeah. And were there things inspiring you when you sat down to work on this as well? Aside from wanting this to sound different, were there things that were really inspiring you, especially with the way the world has been over the last few years?
Yeah, a little bit. Like the whole theme of the album is all about a misunderstood conversation for the most part. And I had that idea kind of kicking around for a while. It was all kind of based on the Myers-Briggs personality tests and how, the perception of conversation really comes down to the receiver, not as much as the conveyor. And then with the way the world kind of ended up, I found with my day job, I kind of sat in a lot more Zoom meetings than I would normally ever in my entire life. I think everyone did. And it's funny how the world of communication changes when you're only a headshot and you kind of have no idea of the context around someone's day or how they're really feeling. You just see them in this one burst, so you really got to make sure that you're not just receptive but communicative at the same level. And then it really makes you think about, I guess, that bigger picture of, speaking to people and spending time with people and being in the moment with people. And then added on top of that, I was expecting my first child during the entire writing period of this process, so a whole new way of communication kind of evolved. And I'm going to have this being. Well, I now have this being who's 11 months old. She has no words. There's goo-goos and there's gagas and there's the word Elmo. I guess that's the only one that she can really form. How do you communicate without words and still get your emotion and intent and ideas across?
Definitely. You mentioned that this was all started about a kind of misunderstood conversation. Was there a certain conversation that you had that kind of sparked it, or was it just an interest that you had in communication in general?
No, definitely no one instance. It's definitely just been a bigger idea that I've always kind of had. the concept kind of kicked around in about 2018, I think, or no, early 2019, where just I really like kind of about the type of personality that people can be, and I guess it's not really like understanding their weaknesses and strengths, but kind of knowing how you should present yourself to people to really make sure that you're understood with the right intention.
Yep.
Kind of leaving nothing up for questioning. And I've always been fascinated by the whole Myers-Briggs, work out your type of personality, and the questions that you answer kind of paint your picture really, really accurately of who you are and what you do and the type of friends you make and the type of conversations that you have and the type of careers that you fall into. It all kind of feels quite accurate. So for me, it was kind of taking these four main characters that are on the album, these four voices, and you can kind of hear them if you deconstruct it, like the themes that kind of reciprocate or come through in different songs, but all tied together. And then how these four voices communicate and chat and talk and influence the conversation around them.
You mentioned before about there being more Zoom calls and everything for your work. Did the lockdowns and the quarantines and everything, did that change the way that you recorded this album at all?
Not the recording so much. I mean, with the idea with Seims is that it's, for the most part, it's me in my home studio writing into the lonely hours of the morning and the lonelier hours of every other morning that you can find. And really it kind of comes down to like getting into the studio and pulling it together. So we don't really, a conscious decision is that we never rehearse the albums, or we never rehearse the songs. Like learn your parts for sure, but don't rehearse it as a band, because I really like hearing the anticipation and the urgency when you actually get into the studio and you capture that first take and that second take, and it's like, that's great. You still can kind of hear you trying to like navigate and keep up and hear yourself, find where yourself fit in, and that's perfect for what I want this album to be. I never wanted it to be prescriptive or polished or like so pristine where you don't actually get the guts of those voices fighting to be heard.
Yep.
So if anything, it kind of suited it quite well. The only thing that it really did do was cancel all our other tours and give me more time to write at home because I had nothing else to do. And that was my getaway, like just spending more time writing and developing. And the final songs were written like 3 weeks before we went into the studio because I just had the ability to just keep going.
Yep. You mentioned also before about bringing the orchestra in more as part of the band. There's a power to this album, I think, this time around that I haven't heard in your music before. Do you think that is part of where that kind of hypnotic power comes from with this album?
Yeah, definitely. I think the big thing, and this came through with the musicians who played on it, they're all beasts. Like, I'm so lucky that everyone's fucking amazing, which is also why I never have to worry about ever rehearsing, because the last thing we worry about is the dots on the paper, and I think when I got the guys involved and just kind of briefed them on what the job is, we spent more time in the studio focusing on things like texture and timbre and the role of their instrument in each song, that I think that process really contributed to what you actually hear now. Like we would spend 10 minutes talking about a bowing texture in Nuance Lost in Translation, and then spend, like 3 minutes recording it. And then we'd spend another 10 minutes talking about it, and then we'd spend another, 2 minutes recording an overdub. And I think that weight of, rather than spending, like let's record take after take after take after take after take, and, it's a bit different, or here it's, well, we could try that a bit more. We could, we didn't, that for me, that I feel like that's quite unproductive, because it's almost like you don't have a guide or a North Star of who should be who in the conversation or in the team.
Yeah.
And I think that came through really clearly, not just in the conversations that I had with the musicians recording it, but also it became really clear when it got to Tim, who was engineering it, and then it got really clear to Alex, who was mixing it, because we knew who should be where at each point. And then I think consequentially in the composition, it obviously comes through as well, because there is an ebb and a flow and a balance of who takes over the words and the lead and the sentence, and then who doesn't, and then who needs to come up where and who doesn't. I definitely think that was a big part of it.
Well, where to now for you guys? What's the next thing that you'll be working on, but also what are the plans over summer for the band as well?
Yeah, really good question. I'm still trying to work that out. The response has been pretty overwhelmingly positive, which is legitimately overwhelming. Which is, I thought, put the record out, just do the same old, but no, it's been a bit more demanding on even just the content front. But we've just announced our UK appearance, so we're playing the main stage at Arctangent in the UK in August next year, which is a gig, and it's a big gig to work towards. And looking to do something in Sydney specifically in February. The one thing that I don't know if I shot myself in the foot or unintentionally gave myself the challenge was, how do we replicate this sound live as a band? And the one thing that I'm trying to work towards is, whatever this gig looks like in February, like, what I do want it to be is, again, involving, that bigger 12-piece band and really doing something special with it, not just treating it like another gig, but making it more of an event. How? I still haven't worked that out just yet. That's on my to-do list. But I do know it would be something that I'd want to film and really make special.
Definitely. Well, mate, that sounds like it's going to be absolutely amazing, especially with the UK gig. I guess to finish off, what would you like to say to people out there that are yet to discover this album, that are about to sit down and take a listen to it for the first time?
The first thing is good luck. The second thing is, probably don't put it on whilst driving if you've not been privy to what encompasses just yet, because I do think there's a few unexpected turns that may cause a bit of a distraction or a bit of a focus.
Awesome. Well, mate, we'll let you get